Good afternoon for you all. Well, it's an honor for me to be here. I have to be very short. I'm from Argentina, so you will apologize my English. And if you have any questions that are not addressed today because of the time, because we are delayed, right? You can write me an email or have them written later. Okay, I'm going to talk about some research findings that are not yet published about overlap of restricted interest and strength in girls with autism spectrum conditions, and what if this issue brings something like a game changer for all. Okay, so we know we have an ongoing research about female autism or autism in girls and women, and we still are figuring out a lot of things. It seems that for a time there was a male bias, right? And female were underrepresented in research and in practice. First of all, I want to acknowledge these three women, which are for all very important. One of them is the most famous woman, and is also a very strength-focused person and who also supports strengths. Another one is someone who is very, very important for all of us, who's Lorna Wynne, and she will always be her for all of us, I guess. And then another one is Grunia Shukarova, which is actually the first psychiatrist to describe autism instead of O'Connor and Asperger. But that for some of the very inspiring women. About the background I was talking about, we have a new male to female ratio, so it's 3-to-1 now, and maybe, like Simon said yesterday, maybe it's 2-to-1 in a time. What our sources of knowledge are? Research mainly, women, clinical findings, what professionals report. There's comparative research. We've been comparing girls with autism with boys with autism, which actually we finally understood that we need to compare girls with girls. That's something we all agree now. But when we talk about bias and gender bias, who is observing, right? Who are we supposed to ask? So this research is, we wanted to know more about the girls, but from the reports from professionals who work with them. So do they treat girls, or girls were not really treated? How many girls they actually treat? What were the formal diagnoses, the comorbidities? Did they have doubts about the diagnosis? What did they observe in those girls? What strengths did they observe? What restricted interest they found? One thing about restricted interest is that, this is an overview, it's not from the reports, but restricted interests are part of the criteria of RRBI, right, at the DSM-5. Repetitive behavior seems to be absent of milder in girls, and restricted interests are frequently more similar to typical developmental girls. That's what research says, and we also see in clinical settings. Assessment of restricted interests or behaviors is frequent, but not in depth. And all the strategies for addressing them are more oriented to the interference that this can create in a treatment, right? So strengths are not usually assessed or observed, and they're not a big part of current autism paradigm right now. Very few research is focused on strength in autism yet. About this research, we made a per-paper survey, instead an online survey that we collect during 4 years. The professionals were all from Buenos Aires, where I'm from, Argentina, who were autism training. And they had to fill in an anonymous research survey, but in paper. The survey was based in the state of the art, and there were some qualitative questions and quantitative questions that I'm going to share, not all of them because it's a very large paper and so little time. So about strength and interest, we ask, what restricted interest did you find in the girls you treated? Please name all. What strength did you find in the girls you treated? Please name all. Okay, so after that, our sample actually were 180 professionals who were we're treating currently 330 girls and have treated in the past 542. So in total, there were 180 professionals reporting about 872 girls whose ages were from 2 to 30 years old. They were not girls, actually, some of them. The age range of professionals was 25 to 65. The expertise level was 5 years, but there were people of 30 years of expertise and people of 2. 90% of them were women, because 90% of the people who work in autism in Argentina are women. We asked them if they treated girls, and for a surprise, pretty much a big part of them have treated in the past or were treating girls. So did they have doubts? More than 50% said they did. They have doubts about the diagnosis because of the presentation. With a frequent diagnosis, more reported with PDD and OS, which is not surprising because girls do not meet criteria sometimes. And then another comorbidities reported were anxiety, which we're finding is very common in girls and maybe related to camouflaging strategies and compensation, ID of course. And then eating disorders was not really present. But when we talk about reported restricted interest, we make semantic categories in all the things the professionals said. And some of them were, well, of course, princesses, art, painting, and drawing. Food was a restricted interest, but there was no eating disorders, which is something to be very aware. But in red are the ones that they were overlapping. Art, painting, and drawing, interaction as a restricted interest, communication, and music as a restricted interest. Of course, there are much more data than I have time to address, but there were dolls, movies, video games, books, literature, animals, fashion, clothes, pretty much what we saw in the clinical setting, and we saw also in research is that interests are very wide and very heterogeneous, right? But when we ask about strengths, again, there was a qualitative question, so people just name all the things they saw. So there was visual processing, good behavior, affectionate, demonstrative, good daily living skills, empathy, music, systematization, detail focus, observer, tenacity, memory, organized, willingness and motivation, tolerance, imitation, art, creativity, interaction, again, on almost 25% of the professionals reported that they found that girls have interaction as a strength, which is a diagnostic criteria. So, some other relevant aspect of these as music, art, and interaction were overlapping as restricted interest and in strength. So, and another point that I want to show in this slide is that a big part of almost like 18% of the sample did not fill in strengths. They couldn't identify strengths, and that's quite a big problem for all of us. So when we're talking about the overlap, which is what I'm talking about here in the minutes I have left, we saw that music, art, and interaction were the three categories that were overlapped. So music for some professionals was a restricted interest, and for some others was a strength. Art, the same thing. And interaction, which is a very, very interesting category to have as a strength or as a restricted interest in girls, because it's a diagnostic criteria, as we all know. They were also present. So when we think about this, we can see, some notes to reflect on these results that they have many, many implications to keep on thinking. But what makes a strength? That's my question that I ask myself as a clinician, as a researcher. What is it that a strength is a strength? And what is a restricted, what it makes a restrictive interest a restricted interest? Well, if you have autism, you can't have a restricted interest without having autism, right? You need to have autism to have a restricted interest, otherwise it's not in the DSM-5. But thinking about how come an RI become a strength, or why professionals are reporting them the same, exactly the same, music, interaction, on art, something that we know that many females are very good at and without autism, but with autism especially. So is the interference, like how much that interest interfere in the process of learning or treatment? Is the environment, is the opportunities that girls or women have to develop their strengths? So getting back to what we said in the beginning, the gender bias and all we are observing we are observing them. So we need to be aware that we are still maybe suggesting that we're getting too late to the strengths of people with autism. We're gonna get to that. Just when they are adults and they're working, we need to get earlier. So for discussion, there's many implications. Research hasn't been published yet, but I like this this relationship between strengths and interests, not really finished by now. We need to know more. So one thing is there's a lot to learn about females' profiles. We're still finding out. And it's for sure a field that's opening new areas of research, sexuality, gender, maternity, strengths, for all of them, right? Not just for females. So how many programs we have to identify and foster strengths? How many specific assessment of strengths in autism we have? Specific assessment like autism-oriented assessment for strengths. A better understanding of this relationship between RI and strengths might change the game for all of us, for all the people, but for all the people who are working and researching and making interventions. So why wait until adulthood to use or develop those strengths? A child with autism might have more problems to get to do what they like, because sometimes that is seen as a restricted interest, something that is interfering, which sometimes it is, but it's not really explored or developed. So we have a good question for all of us. So we need a new dynamic for change. That's the motto of the Congress. That's why I put the logo of the Congress, because I think that's very accurate. Maybe we need a change of focus in research too. Maybe we need to research about strengths and a change of focus from impairment paradigm to strength-based approach. We need more of those. We need a strength-based understanding of autism that could lead us to a real change of paradigm and evolve naturally into inclusion, because everybody could develop what they do best or what they love. So everybody should have in life the chance to do so. This is one of my favorite quotes. I translated into English, but I will say it in English. There was nowhere to go but everywhere. That's from Jacques Kerouac on the Road book. So we should go. Thank you very much.